You're listening to NFRN The Drive, your place for NFRN, NASCAR, and motorsport news. Hello again, everybody. Colin Denton here for another edition of NFRN The Drive. We do apologize that we did not have an episode last time we had a set of races. Unfortunately, the timing and circumstances kind of held us off there, even to post it beyond the stream. But we're glad to be back, and we've got another edition for you today, which includes a double set of highlights. We'll also get into some NASCAR news later on, and then some big announcements that you might want to stick around for, because there's going to be some opportunities for these Elite Cup Series drivers. But, of course, we had races at Pikes Peak and Picks Cliff. Let's look at the Pikes Peak races first at the Elite Cup Series level. Cars take off. David Davidson, William Brock, they both got off to a hot start in this one. Two-car breakaway for them, but midway through the race, Jack Krause gets into the back of Rambo, turns him around on the backstretch, no caution flag. That is going to cost the 4-car a lot of spots. Now, coming into turn number 1, Jonathan Rains puts Dwayne Calloway into the wall. Calloway damaged. This is during a cycle of green flag pit stops. Looks like Calloway wants to come down, but he's slow. He kind of bunches up this field. Johnny Gardner gets into his teammate Zachary Fitzwater Sr., and then Bruno De Barros also taking a hit that sends him around. That's going to bring out the caution flag as De Barros just barely taps the outside wall in turn 3. On a green flag run, Reese Butcher, Mitchell Mark make contact, and that sends Rampage into the wall, as well as Dale Jr. Fan 8883. Johnny Gardner gets spun out of turn 4, and he collects the 76 and 5. Another crash for those guys. William Brock also a part of it. So is Dwayne Calloway. Rambo spins around Tyler Markell off turn number 4. That would bring out the last of our cautions for this race. It all came down to Stuart Gradden versus Jet Krause. Krause had to look for a way to get around the 29 car, but he could not pull it off, and Gradden got to his first career victory. And you can see the results from that race. Top 5 runs from the other JR, his teammate, as well as Brad Stover and Reese Butcher. Bruno De Barros comes back and finishes in 10th place. Great run for him. Julio Caesar, your first race winner, finishes in 8th. But from there, we moved on to Pig's Cliff. John Arndt and Rampage led the field to the green flag. Couple laps in, Noah Ponser makes contact with Justin Roadback, and that ultimately sends Jack Porkins spinning, but doesn't bring out a caution. So now he has to race his way back through the field, but that's not going to take long, because the next lap, a huge accident off turn 6 sends a lot of cars around, and a number of them wrecking out of this race. And then coming through the caution period, William Brock manages to get into Stephen Willey and takes out Jonathan Rains as a result. Eric Monaco also hits the back of the 62 car. That's what drops the 33 car out and gets him a last place finish. And then on the front stretch, big contact right there between Caleb Campbell and Rambo. And that's just from a bunch of hustling to try to shift for position. Brad Stover gets spun around as cars come onto pit road. That's also under caution. And then Julio Caesar getting testy up in here and gets into Jonathan Rains, but ultimately sends William Brock around, all 4 tires off the ground. Big hit for that number 23 car, who was already damaged. And this is something we didn't see during the race. John Arndt gets a little air coming off his pit stall on the front. But this was the big accident that everyone's talking about. Nick Smith with the head-on hit to an angled wall. Julio Caesar also involved in this one. Absolutely horrifying accident. Caesar was okay. Smith was evaluated for a concussion. Was cleared to race today. You can see Carranza also got part of this one, as well as the other JR and Noah Ponser 98 car on his roof as he slides down to the apron. Dale Jr. Fan 8883, Jonathan Rains running 1 and 2. They had to come down and pit for fuel, but the race would end under caution, and the 57 car of Amethyst Ashley propelled herself to her first career victory. And so this is what the standings look like after this one. Gradden, Caesar, and Ashley are race winners so far. They take up the first, second, and fourth spots in the standings. Reese Butcher running on points, gets into 3rd place. And then you can see a bunch of these guys that are running pretty well in the standings. A lot as a result of their good finishes at Pigs Cliff. Now we move on to the Amateur Cup Series. They also ran at Pikes Peak and Pigs Cliff. First few laps, that's Shane Borland getting into John Gilbert, sends Adam Kuhn around, hit by Jake Thomas. Connor Mays comes back up the racetrack and clogs the entire back of the field. And from another angle, Shane Borland comes back up the racetrack and major contact with Kyle Law, who gets up on the wall. Barry Watson, the other car involved. Later on in the race, Herzl Arvin Alonso goes for a minor spin off the front of Alexander Rowe, but that's not the big part of this caution period. It's Austin Rogers and Jason Thales not knowing where to go, and they clog up this entire back of the field. 97 and 92 basically jacked up on each other, and it would be Dwayne Calloway, after all of that, who comes around and takes the victory in Colorado. Griffin Lynn coming home second, which was a big statement run after his huge crash at Columbia. Mike Simpson making his debut. He finished up in 5th place. Robert Harrison and Noah Kim, also guys that had trouble at Columbia, with great finishes in this one. And now Amateur Cup in Pigs Cliff. As they take the green flag, the first lap of the race. 97 and 33 get together. Anthony Lopez, a victim of that one. Couple of hard hits for that 97 car, but there were multiple accidents that occur just on this straight. Ryan Kendall puts Jesse McConnell into the wall. Dwayne Calloway, Herzl Arvin Alonso, TJ Smith all caught up in a spin. Ended up hitting the outside wall. Kenny Knox gets turned by Joey Radcliffe, collects AJ Jones, and Knox's teammate Chase Baldwin, Dylan Lexton also got a piece of it, and Lopez comes in there late after being involved in the accident with 19 car fan and smashes his hood in. And then as they're coming down, right off the restart, guys come down for pit stops, but there's cars that go around for a spin and damages a lot of them. Jack Freeman, you just saw him take that hit to the side of Kyle Law, and he gets up on the hill because his steering isn't going right, but he is lucky that he gets caught on the edge. And then we had a similar incident pretty much on the next restart, and this one's going to put Andy Coleman up into the fence as well as Jacob Rose. And down there in the bottom right corner, Jesse McConnell plows into the back of Kyle Bisceglia. Ryan Kendall just behind him is also getting involved. And it would end up being Chris Harley who would take the victory at Pigs Cliff. And that great run, as well as several great runs this entire season, is going to put him at the top of the standings chart right now. Dwayne Calloway with a win as well is in 2nd, and Donnie Moore in 5th. Connor Mays has finished 2nd in 2 races out of the 3 we've run so far. And finally, the Truck Series also took to Pikes Peak to see what they could do in just a second of their 15-race season. Benny Seitzer gets turned around early. McComb gets into his side. And Jesse McConnell was a part of that one, but he's also part of this one later on that lap, turning Trevor Nix into the outside wall and collecting a number of other drivers. Trevor Nix is notable because he had a decent start to his season, but then he gets caught up in some more controversy as he turns Moses Osborne on the exit of turn 2, basically locked up on his bumper through the entire turn. But Mike Simpson gets the pole and wins the race. And that puts him up in the 2nd place, just behind Barry Watson, who had a 9th place finish in this race. Part-timers Adam Lewis and Derek Northrup both able to make 2nd starts. Lewis finishing in 11th, but Northrup in 3rd puts them in great positions in the standings right now, even though they won't be competing for a championship. Now, obviously, we've got some exciting racing action going on in the NFRN right now, but the NASCAR playoffs are also in full swing. The Cup Series just finished up their round of 16, and we look at this graphic, which was from our daily drive. The results from Dover. Kyle Busch obviously stole a victory from Chase Elliott. A lot of it due to Ryan Newman not giving up his spot on the racetrack, but he knew that if he could get a caution flag and get back around on the lead lap, that would mean that he'd have the opportunity to try to regain that 2-point deficit that he ultimately lost to, and that knocked him out of the playoffs, along with his teammate Austin Dillon. Casey Kane and Kurt Busch also not moving on. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was able to make it. His victories at Daytona and Talladega definitely helped him there, and now he's going to have Talladega back up in this round, possibly going for 3 out of 4 on the restrictor plates. Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch, your only winners this round, put themselves up there, get some extra playoff points, and they're looking like the dominant figures to move on to the championship round and potentially be one of your champions for 2017. But of course, NASCAR playoffs are not limited to the Cup Series this weekend. The Xfinity Series, also in Charlotte, has a cutoff race, and we're going to see who's going to be able to make the round of 8. Justin Allgaier are currently leading the way, along with teammates William Byron and Elliott Sadler. Most of them seem like they're a safe lock. Now, you want to look down in like the 7th to 12th place range. Matt Tifft 14 points up, but Ryan Reed only 2 over Brendan Gaughan. Michael Annett, Blake Cook, and Jeremy Clements are all currently outside of the cutoff line. They're going to have some great days in order to make their way into the round of 8, or they're going to have to hope that one of the guys above the cutoff line, closer to where it is right now in terms of points, they're going to want them to have a bad day so they can get ahead. Now, we spent a lot of time breaking down all the potential free agents for the 2018 season in our last episode of The Drive, and we know that there is a lot of drivers that have gotten their confirmed rides for 2018, and some have been added on in terms of we don't know where they're going to be in 2018. Let's look at the confirmed rides first. Ryan Blaney was announced that he would be moving to Team Penske in 2018, driving the 12 car. Paul Menard moving from RCR to Wood Brothers Racing, carrying some Menard sponsorship. Motorcraft and Quick Lane also renewing their sponsorship for the 21 team. And so that's how the Penske Wood Brothers Alliance is going to look like. Chris Buescher, Ty Dillon, and Brad Keselowski, all guys that signed extensions on their current rides. So we saw that during the period that we were away. And Eric Jones was confirmed that he would be driving the number 20 car next season. Matt Kenseth will be a free agent. Still no word on where he might land, if he lands anywhere. And Casey Kane will replace Michael McDowell in the number 95. Kane was dropped from his seat when William Byron came in, and his new number will be 24. And there's going to be a lot we'll talk about with Hendrick in a few moments, but of course there's also the guys that we know that don't have a ride so far. Eric Almirola is a new one. We weren't sure where he might end up. In fact, we did talk about him, but we weren't sure that was going to come to fruition. And it turns out that Smithfield is leaving Richard Petty Motorsports. It was a very tense situation between the sponsor and the team, but Smithfield is leaving for Stewart-Haas Racing. That could be a landing spot for Eric Almirola, as 2 of the drivers from that team haven't renewed theirs. And we know Danica Patrick will not be returning to the team. Kurt Busch is still in consideration. It's going to depend on where Monster Energy wants to place their sponsorship, if at all. And if they want to come back to the team, in addition to running the entitlement sponsor for the Cup Series, that could be where Kurt Busch lands again. Matt Kenseth, we talked about him being replaced in number 20, and uncertainty where he might go, but he is reaching an age where you're not very sure if he's going to be back in a ride. Michael McDowell, we don't know where he's going to end up yet after being replaced in number 95. We've heard that Front Row Motorsports might be a potential landing spot for him, which is why Landon Castle and David Reagan are also on this list. Their contract statuses are unknown. We don't know if they'll be back for 2018, which makes it a possibility that McDowell might slide into one of those guys' spaces, but at this point it's unconfirmed. We have to see where the silly season will take all three of those drivers. Reed Sorensen expressed interest in returning to premium, but that is not a done deal yet. Darrell Walsh Jr. obviously replaced Almirola in a couple of races over the summer while he was recovering for an injury, and there's been talks throughout the entire year that potentially Wallace could be a replacement for Almirola as Richard Petty Motorsports' lone driver in 2018. So we also in our last episode of The Drive, we asked everybody at home to guess who would be the replacement for the number 88 ride. And the results came back, and it turns out that Alex Bowman was the fan favorite, or at least who everyone thought was going to be in that car. Matt Kenseth actually got 7 votes, so it was a close battle there. William Byron ended up getting 2 votes, but obviously he moved into what would be Casey Kane's team and driving for number 24 next season, and someone else ended up getting 1 vote. So as we're on the topic of Hendrick Motorsports, yesterday evening they unveiled their 2018 schemes, which involved the new Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 body. While Jimmy Johnson retains his spot in number 48, there's number and driver changes all across the board at Hendrick Motorsports. Chase Elliott moving from the 24 to the 9. William Byron driving the 24, even though it's the number 5's current team. And Alex Bowman taking over the number 88. But I think one of the bigger things to take away from this unveiling, rather than the schemes, is the body. Now that we see what any kind of paint looks like on this new Camaro, it's definitely interesting to see, and it's going to look even more interesting when it gets out on the racetrack, because it definitely looks like they achieved something by getting this new car model on the racetrack for next season. But I will leave the opinions on the actual schemes up to the fans, because there's been thumbs up and thumbs down on pretty much every ride among this group of cars. But on to a different big story this weekend. The Charlotte Roval layout was released. Now, it might look pretty much identical to what it looked like when we first introduced the idea, but there's been additions in that there's a bus stop on the backstretch and another chicane up in the front stretch. Now, that turn 16, 17, 18 section is already visible on the racetrack itself, and they've installed synthetic turf, which allows the cars to run across without damaging it or causing damage to the grass, or vice versa. Either way, it's already installed, so they already have an idea of what it's going to look like. And I can tell you, just based on watching test drives around the original layout, which featured AJ Allmendinger, I can tell you that at the start-finish line, it looks like he was letting off the gas and hitting the brakes before he even got to the start-finish line, right off the first kink of the tri-oval. I think one of the advantages of this front chicane is that it should allow them to accelerate to the finish, and there might be a lot better opportunities to make some passing opportunities, because there's a lot to be run on acceleration advantage coming off of turn number 9. But adding these 2 extra bus stop and chicanes is going to make that a lot harder for drivers to have that advantage. There's going to be more passing and hopefully some better racing. But the entire infield section is about what we saw originally. And of course, that will be the layout for the track in 2018 playoffs. This year, we're staying on the oval. In some Xfinity Series news, Richard Childress Racing unveiled some big driver news. Daniel Hendrick signed an extension to stay on with the team, but Matt Tifft is going to be moving from Joe Gibbs Racing over to RCR to drive their number 2 car full-time. Now, Tifft is currently 7th in the standings, and there obviously isn't any word on what prompted the move. Perhaps Joe Gibbs Racing was not going to make the renewal, so Childress went ahead and swept him up as a driver, but that is going to create some questions on what Joe Gibbs Racing might make as a counteract. And I gotta believe that Christopher Bell, considering all the races he's won so far in the Truck Series this season, I cannot foresee any reason why he wouldn't be moving up to the Xfinity Series this upcoming year. He's made starts this year, and he's run fairly well in most of them. A couple accidents along the way, but that is, of course, racing. So that is going to be a question mark for JGR, but Richard Childress Racing has knocked off a couple drivers in their Xfinity program, Brandon Jones and Brendan Gaughan. Yet to see news on where they might end up. We'll see if there's any recession in that team, or if they're going to be able to sign on both of those drivers for another year. And as we get closer to NFRN Elite Cup Series racing, we've got some big announcements that are going to involve the fans. Now, late last month, we made the announcement of the format and drivers eligible for the NFRN All-Star race. Now, we are opening up the fan vote. Take a look at what entails this. This is open starting right now until Friday, October 13th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So that is 1 week from today. This vote includes all full-time Elite Cup Series drivers who were not initially eligible by winning a race in either Season 1 or Season 2. We have granted a waiver to Eric Van Arsdale because he was a Season 1 driver who didn't get an opportunity to compete in an All-Star race, and Colin Lindsay is added onto the already eligible roster for winning a race last season. Anyone is open to vote for this. It is not limited to drivers, so feel free to share the link to anybody you want. Help them vote you up and get your driver into the show. And keep in mind, this is one vote throughout the duration of the voting period. This is not a daily thing. You only get one vote for the entire week. So you can go ahead and go down in the description. The link is there right now, and you are able to make your vote and try to get a driver into the All-Star race. And of course, we'll have the open segments before the main event that will have 3 extra drivers make their way into the show. And finally, to create a little bit more of a community atmosphere in the league, we've gone ahead and opened up a Discord server. The link is now down in the description. That is also included with the All-Star vote. You can go ahead and join the Discord and get connected with all the drivers that are a part of the league. And this is just a startup, so it should be pretty empty right away, but hopefully we'll see this grow throughout the season. And if you don't have an account, it should be easy to create one and get right in. And of course, if you are not signing up by your name, you might need to remind me who you are so I can insert you into different roles, because I'm fairly certain I don't know everybody's driver to username persona, so it might be a little difficult on my part, but yeah, this is just a way for us to connect and conversate, and hopefully it'll be a good time for everybody. But now it is time to get into Elite Cup Series racing action. We're headed to Mirage Short Roval in Death Valley, California. Stuart Gradden holds the points lead and starts on the front row today. We'll see if he's able to extend his lead and potentially get his second win of the season. But for now, my name is Colin Denton. Good night and good riddance.
Louder!